Well, there was a group of about 50 clergy who came together across the city. And we came together across the city because of the work of Reverend John Heinemeyer, who was then the pastor of Resurrection Lutheran Church, which is located basically right down the street from here, between here and Dudley Street, another historic congregation. John came here with a real vision of bringing people together across race, class, geography, and faith. He had been a part of a similar organization in Brooklyn, New York, and also in the East Bronx. He'd pastored 2 churches there over the years. So he came here understanding before he arrived that Boston was a very balkanized city where everybody was turf sensitive and highly competitive. Irish against Italians, black against white, liberal Christian against conservative Christian, Christians against Jews, Jews and Christians against Muslims, rich folk against poor people, inner city over against suburbanites, et cetera, and it goes on and on and on. New immigrants over against old immigrants. So it was very balkanized and divided. The vision was to bring congregations of faith together to form a organization of institutions, member institutions, and by bringing people together across race and class and geography and faith, bonded together by common values that are supported by all of our faith traditions, that we could build power, the kind of power that would resolve some of the grassroots challenges that have so disempowered so many people over the years. So that was the vision. So between where I lived and this church where I pastored, a young man got murdered and was lying there in his blood. And literally there's a church on every block in this area, and on some blocks there are 2 churches. And so how can you have so many churches, so many people of faith who believe and supposedly, and I guess in our own way, live out the power of a resurrected Christ who healed the sick and raised the dead and fed the hungry, and not have enough power to do something about this? And John said, well, it's because all these churches on all these different blocks were all doing their own agenda, and that they were not in relationship with one another. But if they was to come into relationship with one another and agree on a common agenda, then they could amass the power that was needed to make a difference. And I got it. The moment of revelation. And that was my entry into GBIO. At the early days, it really was across, in terms of faith, it was across internal Christian boundaries. It was conversation with Catholics, Roman Catholics, and Protestants, and liberal Christians, and evangelical Christians, and conservative Christians. That was the core that actually gave birth to GBIO in the early days, with the vision of always expanding to include the Jewish community, the Muslim community. Nancy Kaufman, my dear friend, who's the executive director of JCRC, was a part of that founding. The Jewish Community Relation Council. And she was a part of the founding. I want to acknowledge that. But overwhelmingly, it was Christian, and it would be just a little while later before the Jewish community would come in with enormous power and presence, and particularly the reform synagogues of the Jewish community, and then later on a few more of the conservative synagogues would come on board and so forth. And now the Muslims, the largest Muslim mosque, has come on board. So it's taken 10 years for that whole building process to take place, with a lot of victories and a few defeats. But it's been great. It's been great.